From north to south, east to west, Eddie Stobart's trucks traverse the UK.
It's a misty morning on the M1 and the sun's just breaking through the clouds. You're stuck in traffic, half awake, nursing a coffee, when suddenly you see it. That unmistakable flash of green and white gliding past in the slow lane, clean as a whistle, perfectly painted. And there, across the front, a name, Emma Jade. You smile. Maybe you point it out to your kid in the back seat. Because this isn't just another lorry, this is Eddie Stobart. And for decades that name meant something. It meant pride, it meant reliability, it meant Britain at its best. But what you're looking at now, rolling down that motorway, is just a ghost. A beautiful, polished ghost of what used to be one of the greatest trucking empires this country has ever known. This is the story of how Eddie Stobart, a brand that was once loved by millions, became Britain's biggest trucking tragedy. Let's roll back to where it all began. The 1970s, Cumbria. A modest little operation run by a man named Eddie Stobart, who had a simple philosophy: keep your trucks clean, your drivers smart, and your promises solid. In an industry where most lorries looked like they'd been dragged through a hedge backwards, Eddie's fleet shined like jewels. They were washed daily. Drivers wore ties. The cabs were spotless inside and out. It wasn't just about moving freight from point A to point B. It was about doing it with dignity, with standards, with a sense of purpose that made people stop and notice. And notice they did. As the fleet grew, so did the reputation. Eddie Stobart wasn't just a haulage company, it was becoming a movement, a symbol of what British logistics could be when you cared enough to do it right. The roar of those engines wasn't just noise, it was the sound of ambition, rolling forward with pride. By the 1990s, Eddie Stobart had gone from respected to legendary. The trucks weren't just machines anymore, they were icons. Each one had a woman's name painted on the front, a tradition that turned spotting Stobart lorries into a national pastime. Kids would sit in the back of their parents' cars, eyes glued to the motorway, racing to spot the next one. There's one, Rebecca Ann. Grown men had notebooks full of names they'd seen. There was a fan club, 25,000 members strong. People who didn't even work in logistics, but loved the brand so much they wore the merchandise, collected the models, watched the documentaries. Drivers weren't just employees. They were celebrities in their own right. If you drove for Eddie, you didn't just have a job. You had status. You were part of something bigger. The fleet was expanding rapidly, contracts were pouring in, and the green and white livery had become as recognizable as the Union Jack itself. Eddie Stobart wasn't just a trucking company anymore. It was a cultural phenomenon. But behind the gleaming paintwork and the cheering fans, something was shifting. As the company grew bigger, the pressure to keep expanding became relentless. What had started as a tight-knit family operation was now being pulled into the world of corporate growth, big contracts, and even bigger expectations. In the early 2000s, William Stobart, Eddie's son, began steering the ship in a new direction, and eventually the company merged with Westbury Property Fund. That was the moment everything changed. Suddenly, Eddie Stobart wasn't just about trucks and drivers anymore. It was a brand, a portfolio, an investment vehicle. The heart and soul that truckers and fans loved was being pushed to the sidelines. Logistics became the priority. The fleet was still there, still clean, still named. But drivers started feeling the difference. More pressure, more paperwork, less of that family feeling that had made the company special. It was growing, yes, but it was also losing itself in the process, mile by mile. By 2014, the cracks were starting to show. The company split into two separate entities, Stobart Group and Eddie Stobart Logistics. One kept the infrastructure, the other kept the fleet. Employees were confused. Customers were confused. The same green and white lorries were out there on the roads, but they were now owned, operated, and managed under completely different structures. It was a brand being torn in different directions by shareholders, investors, and boardroom decisions that had nothing to do with the reality of driving a truck through the night to make a delivery on time. And then came the most heartbreaking move of all. They sold the name. That iconic Eddie Stobart brand, the thing that generations had grown up recognizing and loving, was sold off and licensed out like it was just another asset on a balance sheet. The quality started to slip. Drivers began speaking out about poor conditions, low pay, and unrealistic hours. The once loyal fan base noticed too: late deliveries, fewer named trucks, less of that magic that used to set Stobart apart from every other fleet on the road. Then came the financial storm: missed targets, mass restructuring. The logistics division went public, then private, then public again in a dizzying cycle of corporate chaos. There were CEO exits, emergency rescue loans, and court filings. And then, in 2019, the unthinkable happened. The company admitted it had literally lost track of whether it was making or losing money. The books were a disaster. Leadership couldn't account for earnings. When a logistics giant doesn't even know if it's turning a profit, you know the wheels have come off. Share trading was suspended. Confidence collapsed. Shareholders panicked. And in swooped DBAAY Advisors, a private equity firm that took a 55% controlling stake in what was billed as a rescue operation. But everyone who'd been watching knew the truth. This wasn't a rescue. This was a salvage job. Eddie Stobart wasn't being saved. It was being stripped down and pieced back together by people who didn't understand what had made it special in the first place. Meanwhile, out on the roads and in the depots, the human cost was becoming impossible to ignore. Drivers who had spent decades with the company were walking away. Some were pushed out. Others just couldn't watch the brand they loved being dismantled piece by piece. Morale collapsed. The proud uniform that drivers used to wear with honor didn't mean what it used to. The camaraderie between truckers, the nods of respect at truck stops, the shared pride in wearing the Stobart badge, started to fade. The lorries still rolled out every morning, but even that felt different now. Many of the rigs weren't even owned by the company anymore. Outsourcing had become the norm. Contractors replaced full-time drivers. The famous green and white livery had become a kind of disguise. Underneath, it was just another fleet, just another name. The fan club went quiet. The lorry spotting culture that had made the brand so iconic was now just a memory. Fewer trucks were getting named. The personal touches that had made Eddie Stobart feel human were quietly abandoned. It was painfully clear. This wasn't Eddie's company anymore. This was a shell wearing his name. And then COVID hit. The pandemic turned the entire freight industry upside down, and for a moment it seemed like it could have been a chance for Stobart to rise back up, to prove that the old spirit was still there, that the company could handle tough times like it had done before. But instead, it exposed just how fragile the operation had become. Delays, disruption, and management chaos plagued the company. Other logistics firms stepped up and adapted. Stobart struggled to keep pace. The house that Eddie built was now being held together by string, spreadsheets, and corporate buzzwords. Through it all, the company changed hands again. More restructuring, more boardroom reshuffles. Even now, remnants of the brand still exist, rebranded, rolled into other operations, stitched together with different firms. But it's not the same. It never will be. What's left of the Eddie Stobart most people remember isn't on the roads anymore. It lives in the photographs, the old documentaries, the grainy dash cam footage of a spotless Scania powering down the A1 with Chloe Louise written across the sun visor. It lives in the stories told by the ex-drivers, the ones who got to live it, who wore the badge with pride, and who watched it all crumble from the inside. You might still see a Stobart lorry out there today, still green, still clean. But if you know what you're looking at, if you remember what the brand used to mean, it hits different. It's not pride anymore, it's memory. Because in the end, Eddie Stobart didn't fail because the trucks broke down. It didn't fail because the drivers stopped caring. The heart was already out of it. Eddie Stobart's downfall wasn't just the collapse of a trucking company. It was the loss of something bigger, a piece of British culture, a symbol of what happens when you forget that behind every brand, every logo, every gleaming lorry rolling down the motorway, There are real people who believed in something worth protecting. And that, more than anything, is the real tragedy.